I think I suffer from addiction, yes.
Yes, I do.
Yes, I do.
My childhood was actually okay until I hit 12. When I hit 12 years old, like I grew up in a good family, very loving, very supportive. But sadly, due to circumstances, I had a babysitter that raped me and got me pregnant when I was 12 years old.
I thought that my childhood was normal until I come to this program and realized all about complex trauma and that what I thought was normal isn't so normal for other people. So I guess my childhood was a bit rough.
Well, my childhood was pretty chaotic. I suffered a great loss when my father passed away when I was 10, and prior to that, I felt like he was the staple that held all of the family together. So after he died, everything just sort of fell apart for me.
Once I hit 12, he beat the shit out of me and kicked me down the stairs, and I lost a child because I got pregnant due to this. And then after that, I had a very good friend that I thought like saved my life. He died in a car crash, a drunk driver, and he pushed me out of the way and he got hit. So after that, I shut down emotionally and mentally, and I spent a severe depression in my room for like 3 weeks. My parents finally were like, "You need to get out of the house." So I went downtown Winnipeg and started getting involved in some really shitty people, and from there I got involved in the sex trade. And I was forced to do a lot of things. I got beat a lot, black eyes, bruises, broken bones, all sorts of things, and lots of abuse from, yeah, about 14 till the age of 18, 19 almost. And, lots of drugs. They basically pumped me with drugs so I would be compliant and do whatever they want. And I pushed a lot of drugs from them. I became a dealer in that time as well because nobody expects a young girl. So, lots of abuse in that time.
I experienced a lot of emotional abuse, mental abuse, being put down, and not never feeling good enough. A lot of that shame and constantly feeling like that. I felt that there's been an aspect of my life that is always not feeling completely there, and I think abandonment was one of them because I feel like there's never been anyone around in my life that's been stable. My mom's always gone around working, and my dad, and nobody's ever there for a long period of time enough for me to get comfortable with them. And so abandonment, neglect are definitely some things I feel.
You know, perhaps there was some physical, there was some emotional, and yes, there was some spiritual, but for whatever the reason, if there was any other type of abuse, I don't remember it.
When I was a child, none. But after 12, again, a lot. I perceived my life as a third person. I didn't really realize that I was living it, and it was scary, and it was just better to disconnect. So I viewed my life as like a third person. So at the time, I fooled myself and said I wasn't feeling any pain, but I felt tons.
A lot. I believe that I was very sensitive and that I could see my siblings able to go through the same things that I could go like same things I would go through and them fare out a little bit better.
In my teen years, my parents and I did fight a lot, but that was because of my addiction and stuff like that. But they did it out of love. They did it because they were worried about me. They did it because they thought they was going to end up in a ditch, right? So I can understand that now, but at the time I didn't, right?
At certain times there was, but it wasn't necessarily the right type of love, if that makes sense. It was more or less, oh, you did good, so we love you. Don't go do good, so we don't love you.
At times, yes, and at times, no. So sometimes I felt really loved, and then other times I felt like, wow, I shouldn't even have been born.
To a certain extent, I was allowed to talk about them, but never cry about them or never get upset or mad. It was always had to be very black and white. Okay, tell me what's wrong. Okay, that's what's wrong. Okay, move on. Okay. Don't deal with them. Just tell somebody and then it's done with.
Not really. Not really. I remember one particular time I confided in a family member of what I was going through, and they said, "Well, you don't know what I've gone through."
Not at all. It was always just kind of seemed like it was in ear one ear out the other. So it's always been kind of hard for me to talk about my emotions and all this stuff. But
Not really. In public school, I had a couple of teachers that made me feel like they cared about me, but I quickly closed the door on that.
Fear. Fear.
probably lonely. I was always bullied a lot growing up. I never had many friends. I was always by myself and so lonely. I was definitely
Lonely. Hmm.
I became scared of everything. I became scared of getting close to people, and I became scared of being who I am. Yeah, fear is the biggest one because I didn't know who I was, and I just thought I was good only for sex, right? So showing my true self and getting into an intimate relationship with anybody, even friendship, I thought I was unlovable. So just scared to be who I am, and
I think it affected me in a sense that it's giving me almost trust issues, because I've never had anyone to letting people in now, it's a lot harder.
I think it affected me because I realized that in order to get through life, I would have to rely on myself, and that up to this point hasn't worked.
Oh, there's a world of difference. I've had a stretch of sobriety before, so I kind of got to know myself a little bit better. And back then, I didn't know my head from my ass, right? I really didn't. And I didn't know which way was up. I didn't know which way to go. My decision making was awful. But between now and then, it's like I'm more confident in who I am now. I get to be who I am and, be kind of crazy and funny and be okay with it. And, there's, how do I put this? I like myself now. I think that's the biggest difference is I can actually be okay with myself. Through people, actually. Through other people believing in me. And by those people believing in me, I finally was able to be like, okay, I can actually do things by myself. I can be independent. I can bounce things off of other people and, make plans in the future for myself, right? And, kind of stepping out of my comfort zone a lot too. That's a big part of it, is stepping out of my comfort zone, because if I live my life in a bubble, that's all I'm going to experience is a bubble. Right? So by people pushing my boundaries and people pushing me a little bit in a good way, right? Not in an unhealthy way, then I just get more confident again. And it just says that, I'm okay and I don't always fail, even though I have the fear of failure and I always think I'm going to fail. I don't. So I think that's the biggest thing for me, is that I just got comfortable with myself in my own skin. I have my own insecurities, don't get me wrong, right? But, those insecurities, they grow smaller and smaller as time goes by. So through React, actually. A lot of it has been through React at Dignity House, the house that I lived in, which is girls getting out of the sex trade. And coming here was a big part of it, because I hated Winnipeg. I didn't think there was any good people here. And through the React program and kind of realizing again a lot of my defects, and React put a lot of things into place. Just like it was a missing piece of the puzzle. AA is great, but the nice thing about Tim is he delves deeper into issues and kind of shines a light on it and says, hey, maybe you should look at this. And I did. Right, so React is a big part of it, and a lot of the counselors here, and I made some really solid, healthy friends. So then they kind of pushed me, and it's good. Yes, I have. I was in treatment programs about 6 or 7 years ago, and it was nothing like this. They just give you so much freedom. They almost don't really care, like they do little programs, right? But they don't delve into a lot of the issues. They just skim the surface. Right? So, yes, I have.
I have not completed any. I've tried a couple, but I didn't complete them.
Yes, I have.
Well, as I already mentioned, it's digging deeper into the root issues. It's shining a light on some things that I've never really talked about before, or wanted to discuss with people. And React is good that way because you can actually have more of a one-on-one with somebody that you trust, with one of the counselors here, and you build that relationship so it's actually trustworthy. And having somebody with the experience as well is huge. So having somebody like Tim or Anita or other people like that, they have experience around this stuff, whereas some of the other treatment centers, they're all by the book, and it doesn't work.
Well, React has been amazing because it actually gets down not to just addictions, but it talks about the complex trauma and what you've been missing and how those 12 basic needs are not being met, and how you don't even realize it until someone actually sits there and explains it to you, and you can understand that. Like I say, my life wasn't as normal as it felt to me, but now opening up and seeing all this and learning even life skills, not even just for addiction, but just to live in modern day society, right? It's not just an addictions program. It talks about more than just that. It definitely helps me because they don't just explain what it is. They'll give you solutions and ways to fix it, and ways to get over it, and ways to start to gain these healthy relationships that you didn't have or that you don't have. And they're always giving you more information and more ways to fix things and ways to resolve your issues and talk about them.
Well, it's getting to the underlying cause of why I do the things that I do, so that's helpful. And then also having someone who I can talk to on a weekly basis, who I know is keeping what I say to themselves, teaching me to be an adult, I guess.
So, the biggest one for me recently has actually been my sex addiction. I've made some mistakes in the last couple months, and working with Tim as well, kind of shining a light on why I have a lot of these issues, because I was in the sex trade, right? And it might have been abusive, but a lot of those characteristics bled over into my current life. Like, I have a lot of deep-rooted issues with sex, the fetishes and stuff like that, and it affects me because it's not really who I am. Right? Like, I don't want some of these things, but they still bleed over into my life, like some of the abuse, right?
Definitely that my basic needs growing up were not met. My 12 basic needs, they weren't met. Maybe 2 out of my 12 were ever met, and not even constantly. So realizing that I'm kind of trying to catch up on that almost, and trying to catch up with my childhood that I've lost now, it helps me realize what exactly has happened to me, like what exactly I wasn't getting growing up, what caused me to have problems now and stuff like that.
I know that I have to sit through some things and to find other ways to cope, and not to stay in those places too long, like to push myself to do things, whereas before I would run from them. My shame and why I carry such a heavy burden, and that it doesn't always have to be this way, that I can start taking off some of that baggage that I carry.
Major times though. I'm learning a lot and continuing to learn. So the nice thing is when I actually learn something, I try not to repeat the same mistake. Okay, that's number one. That's the biggest tool, because everyone makes mistakes and I have to recognize that, right? But it's learning from those mistakes and trying not to repeat them again. That's been a big tool for me. And same with boundaries has been a big one for me, and learning how to communicate properly with people, because when I came here I was bitter and closed off and all these things, but communication for me is the biggest thing, and that's one of the things that they try to teach you in this program, because some of us don't know how to communicate properly. We only lash out in anger or resentment or all those things, whereas I want to come across as kind and compassionate but still be assertive. So
one of the main tools I think I've learned from here is to reach out to people when you're struggling to talk to someone, to message Brittany or message Tim, or just someone to talk to, right? Or even my sponsors for me. Like I finding talking, it's always been a thing that I've struggled with, so trying to open up more is difficult, but it's really helps a lot. And they help me in my everyday life because I literally take what I learn here home with me. I read over it. I can relate to it. Not, like I say, not just through addictions, through everyday life. I can relate to it.
I'm learning to sort of pause and get a different perspective on things, because before I was so emotion driven that would be the first place that I would go to, is having my emotions run me. Now I'm sitting back and being like, no, okay, this is happening, but what I can do is choose to do something else, more positive.
The tools and again learning about myself a little bit more into some deeper issues that I've already discussed, and those definitely help me with my day-to-day, and the boundary setting has been a big one. They do a whole week here on boundaries, and that's been a big thing, because this again just like communicating and staying true to myself and not being a doormat.
Most helpful was probably that there's someone so knowledgeable like Tim that knows so much about addictions. It's so much about complex trauma that can actually explain it and break it down. And like I've never heard anyone speak like that before, that passionately know that much about addictions and complex trauma and all this and understanding it.
I find that what's helpful is that it's teaching us about the brain and what we've done to our brains and what we've done to our bodies, and learning that there's going to come a point in time where I'm going to have to really pick up those tools that I'm learning, because this is something I just can't coast through anymore, that I have to work really hard for myself to have a better life.
Meeting people, actually getting close to people and knowing that people actually care, and caring about other people as well. Those are the big things for me, is actually getting to know people in this program, and because not everybody is psychotic out there, and that is a good thing. So that's been the biggest thing for me, I think.
I enjoyed all the people here, like meeting all these people that are in the same boat as me, and they're cheery and friendly, and we're laughing all the time and having a good time, and it's just an amazing atmosphere. I love being here, and I've never said that about any other program I've been to at all. So, yeah.
I enjoy most about React the spiritual element, because I'm able to talk about my spirituality a little bit more free, whereas before I was at other programs, there was always a cap on it, that this is where your spirituality should be, and if I said something, it was ludicrous, whereas here it's a little bit more accepting, and my counselor brings a lot of things into perspective for me, so that's good.